Super Tuesday is next week. The primaries on that day have a diverse electorate and the largest single-day delegate prize on the Democratic calendar this year. 14 states and 1 U.S. territory are holding their nominating contests on March 3rd. And while it is a big day for presidential candidates, Josh Kraushaar writes for the National Journal that it also marks the beginning of congressional primary season. Josh is political editor for the National Journal, and he joins me now from Washington. Welcome, Josh. You listed off some of the big questions you have ahead of Super Tuesday. One of them was whether left-wing activists will knock out what you call their top Democratic ticket. So what is going on, for instance, in Congressman Henry Cuellar's race in Texas?
This is the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, the AOC wing of the congressional party, trying to take out one of the more moderate Democrats in Henry Cuellar in Texas on March 3rd. And it's a huge test for the left-wing activists that are trying to take over the party, not just in the presidential side of things, but also in Congress. Cuellar is a very talented, well-liked lawmaker. He's a little more moderate on immigration. He's taken some pro-life votes on abortion as well. But he is someone who generally has a solid Democratic vote rating. It's not someone who's really conservative in any way. Mm-hmm. And he's being challenged by a 26-year-old immigration attorney who's fashioning herself along the lines of AOC and getting a lot of money, endorsements from Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and a lot of progressive and feminist groups in Washington. And it's going to be a competitive race. It's going to be one of the most heated primaries that we're going to see this year. And it's one that tests whether the moderate wing of the Democratic Party can withstand a challenge from the ascendant progressive side of the party.
It'll be interesting to watch that race for sure. There are also some Senate races that you're paying close attention to. What's going on in North Carolina and Texas?
Well, these are primaries to choose a Democratic nominee against some top targets for the Democratic Senate campaign committee. We have North Carolina, where Thom Tillis is one of the most vulnerable Republicans on a ballot in November, and he is trying to figure out who his opponent will be. Cal Cunningham, who's a former state senator and Iraq war veteran, he's the preferred candidate of the Democratic establishment. But Republicans are actually spending money to trick Democratic voters for an alternative candidate who's also on the ballot, an African-American woman by the name of Erica Smith. So this is a race that, I think Cal Cunningham is probably gonna win. Whether he gets the 40% necessary to win a runoff, to avoid a runoff rather, is going to be a big test. And in Texas, Democrats are choosing a nominee against John Cornyn. The Democratic establishment likes a former congressional candidate who's a war hero by the name of M.J. Hager. But there are a lot of left-wing activists, one in particular that's running and getting a lot of attention, and there are a couple other candidates that are more diverse, and they're arguing that the Democratic Party needs a more diverse face to run in a state like Texas. So these are going to be very important Senate races as we get closer to November.
And what about that red state of Alabama and its Senate race? Can Jeff Sessions pull off a return to Washington without President Trump's blessing?
Boy, this is going to be a fun race. It already is. It's getting very nasty. Jeff Sessions looked like the favorite because he, after all, was a former senator. Everyone knows who he is in Alabama. But he's running against a couple candidates, including Tommy Tuberville, who, if you're a college football fan, you'll remember him as the former coach at Auburn University. And Tuberville is moving up in the polls. It looks like he's actually going to be squaring off against Sessions in a runoff. The other candidate running is Congressman Bradley Byrne, who was also trying to court President Trump's support, showed up at the presidential box at the Iron Bowl earlier last year. But this looks like a race between Sessions and an outsider who's making the case that the former attorney general was not loyal enough to President Trump, and is going to make that the major issue in the campaign, both now and in the runoff.
You're also looking at how Republicans do in California. We know the party has taken a bit of a hit in California recently. What could a good showing for them on Super Tuesday mean for their chances in November?
So California is a unique state because their primaries, they put all the candidates on the same ballot on the Super Tuesday election. So we'll get a preview of how competitive some of these Republican candidates are against first-term Democratic members. So we may get some evidence that Bernie Sanders could be costing the Democratic Party badly in some of these suburban swing seats that Democrats picked up in November of 2018. On the other hand, if Democrats continue to show strength, their members continue to show strength in these early results, it'll be a sign that maybe we won't see a lot of money spent in California for the congressional races in November. So this is a crucial early test for these Democratic freshmen. And the Democrats picked up at least 4 or 5 seats in Orange County, which used to be a big Republican stronghold.
Can they hold on to those seats?
Can they hold on to those seats?
Right. All right. Well, Josh Kraushaar, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.